handle the truth.
That's right, stop. And good morning, folks. Welcome to Truth versus News here on the 19th of October. Wow, we're heading into the final stretch here for this election, and things are really hot here. This is Truth versus News, and essentially it's also Truth versus official facts, because it looks like there's a difference between news and facts and truth. And that's not the way it's supposed to be, but boy, have we ever got it here, especially with Biden. So let's get introductions here. Jim Fetzer is the most prolific author and essentially show producer here. With some outstanding knows he's a conspiracy guy. And Scott Bennett is the most articulate military intelligence espionage man I've ever run into and run with. He's fantastic. And David Kenny is an articulate legal mind, attorney in California, educator, and we've learned a lot from him. So, Jim, what is Biden doing today? Is he making?
Well, it turns out the New York Post article on Biden's secret email is creating a huge sensation, threatens to overwhelm any efforts Joe Biden has to get out on the stump, which are few and far between. As shocking pictures and damning emails emerge from the laptop, Joe Biden's son with his crack pipe, we have a new low in the dirtiest ever U.S. election. Here's a photograph that's making the rounds, going viral on Twitter and elsewhere, of Hunter with his pipe. No secret, he has considerable personal problems, as President Trump has repeatedly mentioned during this campaign. The twice married father of 5, one child by a former stripper, has a decades-long history of alcoholism and cocaine addiction, as well as crack cocaine abuse. Thrown out of the U.S. Navy Reserve for failing a drug test. Joe Biden himself has said, my son, like a lot of people we know at home, has a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. That hardly looks to be the case. Moreover, we're getting an expose about the Hunter's connections with China and the Biden crime family involving not only Joe and his son Hunter, but his brother James. This is very serious. According to the Post, the email revealed Hunter introduced his father to a senior executive at Burisma less than a year before Biden put pressure on the government to sack the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma. The fellow who actually discovered the emails, John Paul McIsaac, who has his own Apple repair shop, has feared he would be murdered. Here's a photograph of the guy who seems like a very cheerful character, a former Genius Bar worker. Here's a statement about the data recovery, what they do, how it got there. McIsaac offers data recovery services at his store in Wilmington, Delaware. Hunter simply walked in with 3 damaged laptops. 2 had water damage, 1 had a sticky keyboard. He never returned to retrieve them, perhaps because he was drunk when he dropped them off.
Right.
Director of National Intelligence confirms that unlike many of the Democratic posts, this is not part of some Russian disinformation campaign. Where have we heard that before? Meanwhile, yesterday, with Danny Cirrus, who has an extensive background in law enforcement, we did a very thorough 2-hour program on Osama, Hunter, and Joe. Is Joe Biden morally and mentally fit for office? Where it turns out that Joe Biden was the one who revealed that it was the SEAL-6 team that had conducted the raid on the compound in Pakistan, which did not kill Osama bin Laden, who'd actually died a decade earlier. But where it was better dead men tell no tales, they put him in an old Chinook Vietnam-style helicopter so the Taliban could shoot him down. And Danny contributed this wonderful composite of Osama, who is not only our man in Afghanistan getting Stinger missiles into the hands of the Mujahideen, which they used to shoot down Soviet helicopters and planes, but was an officer in the CIA, Colonel Tim Osman, where an official visited him in a hospital in Dubai shortly before his death from his medical maladies and in Afghanistan on 15 December 2001, where he was buried in an unmarked grave. Both Fox News and CNN reported his death on the 26th of December 2001. Here you can see Osama with Condoleezza Rice, with Hillary Clinton, and even with Barack Obama himself. It was politically expedient for Barack to resurrect him and have him die again in the staged raid on the compound in order to position himself for a triumphal re-election, but it was all stage managed. It was a Hollywood production. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, I think the picture of Hunter Biden asleep in his bed with a crack pipe is one of the best representations of white privilege that we could have. But aside from that, we saw this unfold under Rudy Giuliani and his investigation of this. He did a show last night with Levin. And aside from some of the topics I disagree with some of the Fox News commentators about, I enjoy when I hear some of this material coming out. And Levin, I think, did a very good job. He's an attorney. And Rudy Giuliani, putting aside his 9/11 stuff, which I'm happy to defer to you, Jim, to refresh us about, because none of these people are clean or good. But Giuliani had went on and said this computer store hack, or computer Mac store, which the guy looks like he's Scottish. He's got the little hat. He's at an axe throwing thing, and that's an interesting take too. But this company got this laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden, probably when he was high and he forgot he left it there. And in this laptop, we've discovered so far, and it seems to be a lot more material coming out, everything from alleged Hunter Biden raping young girls, which adds to the pedophilia connotations that we've seen unfolding from Pizzagate and elsewhere for a long, long time. Never mind Joe Biden's thumb titillating the nipples of young little 6-year-old granddaughters of members of Congress when he's posing for photographs of them. But Giuliani went on to say there's emails, there's photographs, there's videos, there's obvious emails about setting up multi-million-dollar deals with the Chinese Intelligence Communist Party. We know that he was given money from the wife of the mayor office of Russia. And we know his scandal in Ukraine with Burisma. All of this stuff is going to be coming out as evidence that I think is sufficient for prosecution of a crime. I'll let David Kinney list the crimes that he could be committed for, but I think Jarrett on Fox has said there's multiple crimes. So we see this capturing of data that implicates Hunter Biden into a variety of crimes, and yet we hear the haunting echo of silence from the mainstream media, refusing to talk about this, refusing Stephanopoulos, who should be tarred and feathered and run out, if not executed, by the mob of his own left-wing lunatics. But Stephanopoulos doesn't utter one word to Hunter Biden, or I'm sorry, Joe Biden about this. Giuliani sits down and has a conversation with Joe Biden about the president of the United States position and his running for office, and yet he does not ask him a single question about this revelation of a laptop, which indicates Hunter Biden was setting up multi-billion deals, 10% of which were going to be attributed to his father, the big guy. We know that's who he was referring to. So the mainstream media is refusing to talk about this. Plus, now they're playing a role in a disinformation campaign by blaming it on Russia. I'd like to hear what Russia is saying. I'd like to hear Putin say something like, I've given orders and instructions, and I've called the president to say, I don't know what this is about, or I do know, or I'm shutting it down. The Russians have a duty to expose Hunter Biden's payments from some of these colorful people. But the Russian disinformation campaign has been proven to be a lie from Radcliffe, who got up and said this is all BS. It's a similar play from Adam Schiff. And I mean, there's so many things spinning. The revelations about this and all of the direct implications. I think it's going to quicken more and more, but I'll save more comments for later. Jim?
David, your thoughts?
Pretty damning evidence. I had an opportunity to review Rudy Giuliani's common sense presentation. I thought there was a guy that was interviewing him that was okay, but Giuliani has really laid it out in, I think, pretty concrete terms that there is substantial, reliable evidence that indicates acts of, significant crimes, a litany of crimes. And at this juncture, I think it's going to be real interesting to see what the rollout's going to be. We've seen the examples of the crack, the crack pipe, the abuse. We've seen some of the emails that indicate family dealings with massive amounts of money, apparently. We've also seen indicia that this has taken place in 4 countries, which is Iraq, China,
Russia.
I'm sorry, what?
Russia.
Yeah, Russia and one other one I forget. Ukraine, right? And so I think the evidence is formidable with Director Ratcliffe's comments authenticating the reliability of it. It's overwhelming, I think, for former Vice President Biden. I'm concerned about his own safety. I'm concerned about that he might do something to himself or have something done to him. But this goes far beyond that. It reaches into the family itself. I quite frankly, I went to school with Frank Biden at Pepperdine University. We both were in the same class at law school. Frank was a very, very nice guy. I would say he was not at the top of the class, but he certainly wasn't at the bottom. But he did not return the next year. I noticed that he wasn't there when we went into the second year of law school. Or if he wasn't there for long. But I quite frankly, when I heard all this information, I felt very, very sorry for Frank. I think the evidence is sound. I think the information is going to be coming out in waves over the next couple of days or over this week. So I'm really interested to see what else we're going to see. But this is very, very frightening, very, very scary. And the thing that concerned me the most was that if the American intelligence services have this information, you can bet the Chinese and the Russian services have it as well.
Yeah. I think that's a very safe bet, David. Absolutely correct. Meanwhile, Facebook is reducing the reach of the damning Hunter Biden email story by the New York Post. The social media giants, including Facebook, are beclowning themselves in a desperate bid to cover it up for the Bidens. The big tech oligarchs have declared war on the Republican Party and conservatives, and I promise them, those in Silicon Valley, winter is coming. The Biden-backed company has issued an array of contrived excuses, including Twitter's claim the New York Post bombshell violated a never-before-enforced 2018 policy that prohibited the sharing of hacked information. Completely nonsense. This is ridiculous. The Post, meanwhile, claimed Joe Biden had never pressured Ukrainian prosecutors to fire a prosecutor, Ukrainian officials to fire a prosecutor investigating corruption at the Burisma Energy Company, despite a 2017 video in which the former vice president admits to doing precisely that at the Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, it's disgraceful. Far from being esoteric and unverified, the video was widely referenced and circulated during President Trump's impeachment proceeding for alleged abuse of power after he asked Ukraine's new president to reopen the investigation. Some pointed to the paper's silence over recent leaks of President Trump's tax information and those used to propel the FBI's 2016 Russia hoax, among countless examples of its duplicity in making exceptions to the rule when they benefit left-wing narratives. Unbelievable. The paper that was the uncritical receptacle for the sketchily edited leaks of the Russia collusion narrative had a policy against what it did. Interesting but weird how it's unevenly applied. Also, the 2018 midterms and your smear operation against Kavanaugh would like a word at Twitter from Molly Hemingway. Others were critical of the media response and noted the eerily Orwellian quality of it, where Orwell was quoted, "Every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. history has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless precedent in which the party is always right. From 1984 and mid-Dominic ads, this is Orwellian. Twitter hasn't partnered with any fact checkers, and this whole censorship is happening before anything is fact checked. Their official laughable explanation is that it's hacked material. Tech companies have long used a statute. This is giving them immunity from liability to claim free speech protection by insisting they're simply conduits rather than curators of user-generated content. As Tom Cotton has observed, the big tech oligarchies have declared war on the Republican Party and conservatives, and I promise them, those in Silicon Valley, winter is coming. There will be a revisiting of these issues. Fox News, Tucker has, of course, railed against this suppression, describing it as an in-kind donation to the Biden campaign, warning the high stakes of inaction would, at very least, potentially cost the Republicans the election. I don't think that's correct, but it's certainly not a good thing to allow that to happen. Meanwhile, anonymous intel officials claim Giuliani was a target of Russian influence campaign, claiming that this was all nonsense. Well, what about the photograph of Hunter with his crack pipe? Meanwhile, this is consistent with Democrats using a double at the debate. Notice how the double had no earlobes. Biden has earlobes. Biden has a wider face, the double a narrower face. Biden ties a double Windsor, the double a single Windsor. Biden has blue eyes, the double has brown eyes, as James Woods was the first to observe. Meanwhile, C-SPAN suspends Steve Scully, who was scheduled to conduct the second debate after admitting he lied about Twitter hack when it was revealed he'd reached out to a never Trumper to get advice about how to embarrass Trump during the debate, which did not take place. Instead, they had the competing town halls. Yeah. James Wood, of course, reserved about the very first debate with Chris Wallace. President Trump crushed his opponent, Chris Wallace, head-to-head in the debate. There was also another fellow wandering around muttering to himself and the like. It even turns out that the moderator for the third debate, which will be this Thursday, also has deep ties to the Democratic Party. I mean, this is disgusting. The Election Debate Commission obviously stacked the deck against the president. What a disgrace. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the most telling quote there, Jim, is when you said Tom Cotton had said that big tech has declared a war on the Republican Party and conservatives. And I think that's precisely right. When they are gagging and limiting and hiding information that the American people, for the security of their lives, their prosperity, their children, need to know that Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, had his son parasitically attached to him, traveling on Air Force One, making backroom deals with the Chinese Communist Party. Incidentally, I'm reading a book, Unrestricted Warfare, about how the Chinese have been waging, it's written by two Chinese colonels, David Kennedy and I have had some interesting conversations. When I finish, I'll do a review of it. But so far, the Chinese Communist Party is very adept to infiltrating the United States through social media and twisting and perverting and corrupting the internal American mind in order to make them susceptible, defeat them before they even raise a weapon. And this is part of their strategy. They target these weak-minded, lustful, drunken, drug addict, rapist monsters like Hunter Biden and his father, the apple doesn't far from the tree, and manipulate them and bribe them and give them tens of millions of dollars. This is a Chinese plot. They've always done this. They always will. And it works on the Democrats, and it's worked on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. That's why Joe Biden was giving sweetheart deals to the Chinese communists and saying they're good people. The American people need to know that. They need to know every detail of that. They need to see all these emails and photographs. And for big tech media to cover it up, there's going to come a day, Jim, and I see it, and I certainly don't advocate for it, but we have to be honest and share what we see coming. You know, I can see the day when people aren't just shooting at the Google bus like they did 6 months ago or a year. I could see people going in and actually decimating and destroying and blowing up with C4 and weapons and cars and all sorts of things, these social media companies, because they are going to be perceived as doing so much harm and waging war against America, that people are going to react with a bloodthirsty rage to destroy these companies. And I don't think that's an exaggeration, because the more people see on things like Project Veritas, the hostility and the arrogance and the inhumanity and the vile, narcissistic, selfish paranoia of these YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, high-tech personality, coding people that have a resemblance to the Big Bang Theory but are much more malicious. People aren't going to tolerate it. They're going to destroy these businesses. They're going to get rid of them. They're going to take people out. That we are entering a phase in this country where this is a very real scenario of reaction, not because conservatives are bringing the fight, but because they're being attacked. We saw it in San Francisco this past weekend, a conservative rally where the left in Antifa assaulted and knocked the teeth out of a black conservative who was getting up to speak, and the police had to stop the rally. It was to criticize big tech, and this is very alarming. So they're going to have hearings. Senator Grassley, Senator Cruz, Senator Graham have all said they're going to have hearings on these big tech companies. They're going to drag the Twitter CEO and probably Facebook and others in front of them and say, why did you selectively choose to hide a story about Hunter Biden, who may have committed treason, who may have committed espionage, who may have aided and abetted an enemy of the United States in terrorism and all sorts of other corruption, who may have been a conduit for these intelligence operations? Why did Facebook and Twitter and these other big tech companies cover that up when it was reported by the New York Post, one of the oldest, most respected newspapers in the country? And I think that's a question that should demand the removal of these CEO techs. It should immediately demand that the Federal Communications Commission under Ajit Pai, who is an Indian conservative guy, I know people who know him, the FCC chairman needs to step in and say, no, you're done. You're now being looked at. I'm sending inspector general agents inside the guts of your organization. You have no cover. You are a political intelligence apparatus that is aiding and abetting the enemies of the people of the United States, and we're going to investigate you with the Department of Justice. Let's see how your stock price does now. Let's put it out there that you are being investigated for all sorts of problems and see how your stock price goes. That's how you take these bastards and put their balls in a vice and squeeze them till their eyes bulge out. Go ahead, Jim.
Those are great points, Scott. And I think that Twitter made a colossal mistake when they censored President Trump's own personal tweets. I mean, how outrageous can you get? The president of the United States being censored by a social media entity with clear ties to the opposition party. David, your thoughts?
Disgusting.
Yep.
Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and now you have big tech telling us what we're going to think, telling us what we're going to read, telling us what we can't read. This is just censorship at its worst. Actually, I like the fact that Twitter canceled the president's tweet, because now there's actionable grounds to retaliate against Twitter. Yeah. And I think it should be, to use Mr. Bennett's form, unrestricted warfare against Twitter. I mean, this is just unfathomable to me. What's really very disturbing is the simple following fact. The truth about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, if that evidence is to be believed, and I believe it is absolutely well-founded. Now, to suppress that, to conceal it, to censor that information is shocking. They should be if they were providing a service to the American people, they should be putting out the truth. They should be straightening out the facts. They should be sharing that with society. It's just damning that big tech has decided amongst themselves that they're going to determine what we think, how we think, when we think about it, and so on and so forth. You have to realize that China has survived as a country basically for over 5,000 years. Their histrionics and warfare are well established. This is not a new game for them. It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. You know, Confucius said about taking over or engaging in war that you start with education. You move into education first. The first battle is 100 years to secure the education. I believe that's what's taking place in America. I believe that Obama had 100,000 strong with China, had 100,000 strong with Latin America, and was trying to flood America with educators that were working on his particular point of view. Now, what you see in San Francisco now, I just picked up the other day that this I think it's Mark Sanchez, who's the president of the board of directors or the board of trustees of the San Francisco Unified School District, is now advocating that schools bearing the name of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that those schools should be renamed because they're affiliated with colonialism, racism, everything. It's just shocking to me that there's an insurrection. Our public funds in California are going to educate children to be engaged in rioting, to be engaged in acts of insurrection. It's unbelievable to me. And this is getting out of hand. I think it's just going to get worse and worse and worse as we go down this road. Now, big tech has got to be fair, and they've got to put the information out, and the failure to do so is going to leave them wide open to attack by legal process. It's just shocking to me.
I think you got it exactly right, David. Exactly right.
Jim, let me say something real quick. So Don can put up a couple images to accompany this statement. Don, you will remember, and Jim will remember, we did an expose of the New Zealand shooting in which the New Zealand shooter appeared to be going through this mosque and not firing a single bullet into a person or any walls because it did not match the typical percussion behavior of high velocity bullets being fired by high caliber weapons, 5.56, into a drywall, into human bodies. We simply saw people fall down. We saw close-up shots of guns blowing off skull caps, but no implosion of a brain or a skull, which anybody who's in the military knows that happens. And we exposed that. We also exposed the most damning evidence of a shotgun being fired inside a vehicle and not shattering the glass and not bursting the eardrums. That's physically impossible. I've talked to many people, FBI agents, police agents, former Secretary Treasury guys. They all said that's impossible. So the weapon, the term for bullet velocity, projectile, concussion range, and things like that are inconsistent with this video. We exposed that. And the moment we put that video out and we said frame by frame by frame by frame, and I've still got the video, is a complete fraud. This did not happen the way it's reported. This whole thing is a false flag. The moment we did that, Twitter took down my Twitter account, I think everybody else's, my Facebook account, and or my YouTube account and Facebook account. I had to start all over again. I had to create a whole new persona. No. And that to me is that is not 230, a code 230 under the FCC guidelines activity that's protected. That is aiding and abetting a crime that Facebook and Twitter need to be charged in a court of law for. They covered up a false shooting that was exposed as a crime that any jury that saw the evidence and saw what we reported would judge that this did not happen, and therefore Facebook and Twitter participated in a cover-up. That's how we need to, as David said, wage asymmetric warfare against these high-tech companies. By going into court and say, no, you piece of garbage, we don't care what your platform FCC 230 is about. We care about these false flag shootings that you have covered up. You've aided and abetted the enemies of the people of the United States and done all sorts of crimes. That's how we take them into court and file these actions against them, and I think hobble them very, very badly. Jim?
Well, anyone who wants substantiation of the point Scots have been making about the New Zealand shooting, go to jimtheconspiracyguy.com, because one of my earliest presentation as a conspiracy guy was a very thorough dissection of the New Zealand shooting, including the whole video, where you can be fined for $10,000 or sent to jail in New Zealand if you even have it on your computer. You need to see it, because everything Scott's been saying is exactly right in accordance with the evidence. It's a disgrace. Don.
Oh yeah, it's really something. I can't believe how terrible this country has gotten, how far out of whack it is, and the sense of truth and provable truth, and cover it up without any basis other than deception is just wrong. And so yes, God, this is aiding and abetting crime, distortion, and money laundering and all kinds of things that is bad. And I don't know that Biden's going to make it all the way to election day. He should be arrested, in my mind.
Well, he may even be taken out. Meanwhile, get this. We know we have this independent analysis. Trump has a 91% chance of winning a second term based upon turnout in the primaries, where Trump had more than 90% turnout. Biden had less than 10%. Completely different. A brilliant piece, Bad Polls and Good Polls Explain the Art of Polling, by Carol King. She points out, as mainstream 2020 polling continues to show Biden winning with numbers that Barack Obama did not attain in 2012, independent pollsters are questioning their methodologies and models, predicting 33% of the electorate will be 39 years old or younger. The under 40 vote may favor Biden by a lot. But people like Kahali, Rich Maris, and the Democracy Institute are skeptical this will really reflect the percentage of young people who vote. Mainstream polls are mimicking 2016 too. In Pennsylvania, Biden has maintained high leads over President Trump. Today, they show him winning by 7%. Likewise, in 2016, Hillary was ahead by 3.9 in polls, with third-party candidate Gary Johnson receiving 4% of the vote. They forecast her as having a 77% chance of winning. People from both Trump and Biden camps are unsure whether history will repeat, whether polls will again fail to understand which voters are going to turn out. In fact, several non-mainstream pollsters who identified trends predicting a Trump victory in 2016 are showing very different results, namely a repeat of what happened there. Here's one. This Calais method involves asking who you think your neighbor is going to vote for, detecting a shy Trump voter effect, where for Florida, he's projecting now Trump's ahead with 48.4%, Biden 46.1%. Very significant. But look at this. All of these 7 metrics and trends are in Trump's favor. 1, no incumbent who's received at least 75% of the primary vote has lost re-election. Trump received 94% of the primary vote, the 4th highest of all time. He set a record for primary participation levels for an incumbent with 18.1 million votes. 2, every candidate since 1988 that led in enthusiasm won the election. This year, Pew gives Trump a 20% lead in enthusiasm. The leader in this poll has won every election since 1964. 3, a majority of polls expect Trump to win, and the expectation question has proven more accurate historically than the voter intention question that gives Biden the edge. 4, beginning in 2004, the candidate who led in Google searches has won the election. Trump leads Biden in Google searches by a ratio of 3 to 1. 5, the maximum time that a successful candidate become president has served in the Senate is 15 years. Joe Biden's been serving for 36. 6, no former president has taken longer than 14 years to get from their gubernatorial or Senate victory to the presidency again. Joe's been around 36 years. 7, finally, Trump is even ahead in many of the cookie election polls that run in various states, have the candidates' images frosted on cookies, jousting for the most bought cookie in battleground states. Meanwhile, new polls show Black support for Trump is surging. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I actually believe the Democrats threw away any prospect they had not for winning, but for losing by a landslide when during their virtual convention they failed to address urban violence, not a word about it. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you said that, Jim, because I was having a conversation this weekend with a black friend of mine who's a conservative female. She was in Washington for the Concerned Women for America and the Blexit and things like that. And, you know, she said a very good point, and we're in agreement that the black population is turning to Donald Trump because he's given them opportunity. He's not a racist man. He enjoys giving prosperity and opportunity to people because he gets a spiritual joy, and it says it is more blessed to give than to receive. So he gives to people the opportunity to be successful, to get off welfare, to exercise their imagination, to be prosperous. The same thing the Republicans did in the welfare reform laws of the 1994 Contract with America. And Star Parker, who was a welfare black mom on all this welfare stuff, came out and became a conservative icon because suddenly she's able to live. She's no longer being parasitically bled by the Democrat Party and kept in a perpetual state of depression and fatigue and hopelessness. That's what the welfare system does. And Donald Trump is adamantly against that, and his enthusiasm is tremendous, and he's awoken something to the black population, while the Democrats go around knocking out the teeth of black conservatives and picking fights and going in complete madness. I think the black population needs strong males like Ice Cube, for example, is another individual who is apparently being attacked now because he is not pro-Trump, but he is shifting in the direction of common sense. And that's the new paradigm shift, is the black population shifting away from just do what the massa says, don't be questioning nothing, just get your welfare checks, moving towards common sense. And these black male icons need to be stepping up and with an anger and a hostility and a passion say, don't you be telling black people what they need to be saying or thinking or doing. We do that. We're the black community, not you. We understand our trials and tribulations, not you. The white Democrats or the Dixiecrats, the white Democrats are the Ku Klux Klan. When has a Republican ever given an homage to Robert Byrd, the grand Ku Klux Klan master? Never. And it is all the Democrats that own slavery and the Klan and all this racial abuse in the South and all this nonsense. The Democrats that owe the disintegration of the black family under welfare programs and things that were put forth that decimated generations of blacks. It's the blacks, it's the white liberal Bidens who put in these police laws where you get busted for an ounce of crack, you're in for 50 years. You get busted for an ounce of cocaine, you're in for 5 days. All of these things need to be articulated very clearly and passionately by black males who can then reach out to their own people and say, you want to work and be part of the Democrat plantation? You go ahead, but you're killing yourself and your own generations and you're cursing yourself. You want to come out and be independent and be what God meant you to be and fulfill what Martin Luther King said, the dream, then it's through the bridge of Donald Trump. And I think they're going to make that case, and I think it's happening, Jim.
I believe that Jesse Jacksons and Al Sharptons of the past are increasingly being viewed as Uncle Toms, as just stooges for the Democratic Party. David, your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm going to reduce it to simplicity. There are two performers. There's a guy by the name of Josh Krajicek, and we'll get to the other person in a second. But he does a song by Etta James called At Last, and he delivers this on voice, or the voice or whatever it is, and it is by far one of the most moving performances I've ever seen. He's a white guy, working at a taco stand. He slings burritos for a living, but it's just a remarkable presentation. Every time I see it, I'm very moved. But I am not moved to the extent that I was moved when I witnessed Sarah Ikuma sing a famous Whitney Houston song, or I forget who, it's by someone else before her, back about 20 or 30 years, but it's I'm Telling You. And she, it's a big black woman. She's 17 years old. She comes on The Voice, and she sings this song and belts it out and hits every single note perfectly. And every time I see it, I am so moved, I break into tears because I see this woman from nowhere just knock it not out of the park. She knocks it out of the country. And what I love is when I see a Black woman who's, been rejected by everyone, and she has this opportunity in America to just sing her heart out and just send across the peoples, across everyone in America, all the people who are like grass, and we wither and we fade away. And here comes this magnificent performance, and it's so good. It's like it's blowing on the flowers of the people. It just the voice just shatters everything. It's just a magnificent display of this magnification of beauty when she's singing. And when I see that from Black people, I am so moved. I am so humbled. I'm so appreciative. I just can't tell you how much I rejoice. I'm moved to tears. And, the Black people in America, God love them. They've been through enough. And I believe Donald Trump offers them a hope for the future. The Democratic Party, in my opinion, is nothing but continued enslavement, and its program and agenda has to be rejected.
Well, David, that was quite eloquent. Your reaction to their songs reminds me of my reaction to the mega version of YMCA. I mean, every time I see that, it just reduces me to tears. It's fascinating.
It's good to have that ending for the rallies. That makes
Absolutely. Meanwhile, did identity politics backfire on NBC during President Trump's town hall? Joe Biden essentially had a 90-minute, well-rehearsed campaign ad on ABC Thursday night. They called it a town hall event. But with frequent commercial breaks, almost certainly planted questions, and former Democratic advisor George Stephanopoulos hosting, it was nothing more than another in-kind contribution to the Biden campaign by the mainstream media. Over on NBC, by contrast, Savannah Guthrie considered herself a fill-in for Joe Biden and badgered Trump about white supremacists, QAnon, the Wuhan coronavirus. Both networks had their assignments. ABC needed to make Biden look mentally competent. NBC needed to make Trump look like Adolf Hitler. But NBC experienced a snafu when it came to optics, because it was a woman of color in view of the camera nodding her head along in agreement whenever the president spoke. The View's Joy Behar called her a bobblehead. Maybe Joy can don blackface again and go as her for Halloween, but the nodding woman single-handedly threw a wrench in the liberal media's plan that night to smear the president as a racist. Liberals were so upset with the woman, they immediately rushed out and doxed her. Her name is Myra Jolie, and she is indeed a Trump supporter. She spoke to Real America's Voice, revealed NBC producers had switched her from original seat before the event to position her in view of the camera. Joy has a theory as to why NBC did that. The way I look, maybe they thought I'd be a non-supporter because you know how it is. Using a woman of color as a prop, what a white supremacist thing to do. I call on NBC to immediately denounce white supremacists. The woman admitted it was possible she may have been asked to switch seats for another reason, but there's a strong possibility NBC was playing identity politics that way that day, and it backfired on them. I think absolutely she's right. Here she is being interviewed about it. Her nodding blew the game. Meanwhile, and this is absolutely fascinating, Corey Lewandowski breaks down the latest Trump internal polling. This appears to be accurate. Listen to every word. Sean, our polls today internally and even in Real Clear Politics are better today than they were 4 years ago. And you know, when we looked at battleground states, when we looked at Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan, we looked where those numbers were. And 4 years ago, Donald Trump was down by a larger margin to Hillary than he is today to Joe. And today, the Trafalgar poll in Michigan showed Trump with a lead. This is the first time in 5 years he's been a candidate that he's had a lead in Michigan. He won the state 4 years ago by 10,704 votes. He's going to win it by a larger margin this time. Moreover, Sean, we've got 4 or 5 different opportunities in front of us, meaning ways to win the election. And it's an opportunity, a much broader field than we had 4 years ago. We're going to win Arizona. As Republicans, we have a voter registration advantage here. The Democrats aren't talking about Texas anymore. The state of Ohio, and I shouldn't have to say this on my TV, it's out of play for the Democrats because all of the work and the jobs and the manufacturing that's come back because of the president's policies. The great white whale for Republicans has always been the state of Pennsylvania, but that's where we are. We are not only competing in Pennsylvania, we're competing in Minnesota, where no Republican has won since Nixon's reelection in 1972. Donald Trump lost that state by about 45,000 votes, about 1.5 points, but the state is trending Republican because of the work he's able to do up there. Those people ought to come home. And Donald Trump's going to be the first president in about 50 years to win Minnesota as a Republican. That really is where things stand, and is the reason why Joe Biden's campaign manager is putting out reports saying, don't believe the polls are inflated, it's much tighter, campaign as though you were trailing, because they are. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, I want, of course, the president to be elected, and I want the optimism and such. We have to keep fighting hard because they're going to try and steal this election, Jim. They're not going to surrender it. They're not going to recognize Trump. They are going to lie and cheat and steal and kill and rob and bully and cause all sorts of problems. People need to pray against it. People of faith need to pray that the madness and the demonism, the evil behind so many of these people is just obliterated and destroyed. It's very encouraging to see the caravans of Trump waving cars and flags and people lining up on the streets when Trump's motorcade goes through. It's very inspiring to see the YMCA song, Jim, which I think you were a leader in recognizing the value of that, play and excite people, and little children doing the YMCA with joy. And parents need to see that because their children being full of joy to Trump's song will naturally incline them to his favor. And I think this is going to gain momentum and motion. And people, the best representations of Donald Trump are the joy and the hope, the optimism, and the rediscovery of what Americana is because of Donald Trump. We have suffered since 1990. This country has gone down the tube since 1990, when that piece of garbage, vampire, child molesting piece of nonsense, George Bush Sr. was president, then lost it to the rapist Bill Clinton and his vampire beast of a wife, Hillary Clinton. And the 90s was a decadent year. That's when they caused much of the corruption of this country. And then George Bush and Dick Cheney and their endless wars and betraying conservatism. And then because of that betrayal, you had Obama and his boyfriend, Michael LaVaughn Robinson, come in for another 80 years. The people of this country have been whipsawed between these absolute corruption and abusive. And Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and the scam with China is just another indication of how they were using America as a wheel of fortune. Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation did the same thing. They've abused and corrupted the American people, and the American people recognized it. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. And the media lost their minds because suddenly the people of this country were no longer a bunch of sheep in a corral being milked and bled and sheared. They were owners of this country. They were patriots again. And Donald Trump really was the Moses that led them out of Pharaoh's Egypt. And I think he's being seen as continuing. They are not going to allow him to lose. If the president says, I've won this election and I am not stepping down, these people are frauds, they're Chinese spies, they're traitors, you will see every American with a gun, with a badge, with a military emblem, active duty and retired, stepping up with every necessary accoutrement and instrument to defend this president, to make sure he is never taken out. You will see members of the military stand up and execute superior officers that try and give an order to take action against the commander-in-chief. I would do it if I was in my battalion and I got such an order from a lieutenant colonel or a colonel or a general saying, we're going after the president of the United States. I'd be the first to pull my 45 and execute him and say, this battalion is under the command of the commander-in-chief. This is the moment of civil war that we squelch. They're trying to kindle a fire. We dump Niagara Falls on it and extinguish it, because this country will not survive Joe Biden and this racist, bigot, fascist Kamala Harris and this reorientation towards degradation and misery and death and all of the perversion that the left represents. This country can't survive it. People know that, and they are locked and loaded for anything that comes. That's why you've had more guns bought in the last 6 months than ever before. And it's because of the mob and the left wing acting like maniacs, acting like mad dogs, that I think the American people are going to say, okay, now it's time to put them down like mad dogs. Jim?
Wow.
It is. We both know, Scott, military officers are under an obligation to disobey illegal orders.
That's right.
And I believe your description of what could happen here is spot on. David, your thoughts?
Well, I saw that interview of that, I guess her name is Jolie Myra, which was the black woman who was sitting behind Trump. And I really liked the interview for 2 reasons. Number one, I like it when she first started to speak, she was clearly not a native born American. I thought maybe she was from the Caribbean somewhere. I just couldn't place the accent, which I can usually do in a heartbeat. But I like the fact that she was a business person. She said, I'm a business person. I agree with him. I like him. And I just love the fact that when I first listened to her speak, I was a little turned off. But the more I listened to what she was saying, the more I enjoyed it. So I really got a big kick out of that. I thought she did a really good job. But one of the other stories that we haven't heard about or we haven't mentioned is that there was a cardinal up in San Francisco who went over to the statue of Father Junipero Serra and performed an exorcism, right out in the streets of San Francisco to get away the devil, get away the demons that are attacking the statues of Father Junipero Serra. And, I thought he should, that's a great place to start. It's a big city. He should continue to be working this week. So that's kind of my view on that. But with regard to the polling and everything, one of the things that has concerned me extraordinarily is the following. On March 3rd, 2020, after the primary election, March 4th, the following day, Governor Newsom declares an emergency. I've said this before. By March 15th, certainly by St. Patrick's Day, the 17th, county elections offices throughout the state of California were closed to the public.
How about that?
That's a true statement. County election officials' offices were closed to the public. If you were a member of a governmental agency, you could get in and move your measures passed, you get election materials, you could get all that done. Now, I want to know why they were closed to the public. I mean, it's all, quote, COVID and the threat and, 6 feet away and wear your masks and everything else. But, the back doors could be open. The back doors could be open. Who knows what's being shipped into those offices? Who knows what kind of records are being adjusted, what ballots are being produced? These are real concerns of mine, legitimate, and I believe they're legitimate concerns. But so I'm worried about the county elections officials and what was going on. As far as the polling, I'm delighted to hear that Trump's going to win Michigan. My daughter is currently in Michigan with her husband, and they called me and they were out having a couple of beers. They said they just had a great steak dinner the night before. They were out having a couple of beers at a brewery and sent me some pictures of it. And it just, it looked like, from what I could see, it looked like Republican country. And, I've always been a middle of the line guy. I've always been right between the Republican and the Democrat Party my entire life. I was delighted to see, the Trump stickers in the background, so on and so forth. But the campaigning that takes place up in Michigan, especially with Whitmer, it doesn't surprise me that Trump's going to take the state. The Democratic Party and its governors have just beat the living crap out of the people with COVID, with restrictions, with prohibitions from leaving home. People, think about this. Think about this. In March, shelter in place, stay at home, don't go out, do not leave your home. For 3 months, my wife was absolutely terrified about me leaving the condo, running down to get some work done. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. And here, as we get closer to the election, all we have the ramping up again of COVID and everything else. So I'm delighted to hear that this is going on in Michigan, and I'm sure it's going to just sweep Ohio and other states. But make no mistake, the National Democratic Party under Tom Perez, who I don't trust as far as I can spit,
Right.
Okay, out to get the heartland of America, and they're going to be back at it after this election. They're going to be back at it. They're going to be coming on year after year after year to get the heartland of America. And I think the heartland of America, thank God for Donald Trump, is going to be able to stand up on its own and to beat him back.
My prediction, David, consistent with your observations, is that post this election landslide, and I guarantee you it's going to be a landslide, notwithstanding all their efforts to suppress the vote, to manipulate the outcome, mail-in ballots and all, the Democratic Party, as we know it, will no longer exist. It will have succeeded in destroying itself so thoroughly, they're going to have to completely revamp the party. They're going to have to re-envision their policies, their principles, and their objectives, because they will have so totally discredited themselves. No one in America is going to have any belief in the Democratic Party. It is disgusting. It is repulsive. It's been on the wrong side of every issue, and it's doing its damnedest to destroy the United States as a viable economic and political entity. And I say, damn one and all of them. Damn them all, from Tom Perez top to bottom. And damn the Democrat senators, damn the Democrat congressmen who are promoting this nonsense, not just the squad who have been the vanguard, but everything else where they've used BLM and Antifa as the vanguard. They thought it was going to be a voter registration drive. If you contribute to BLM, it goes directly to Act Blue, which is a Democrat fundraising site. So that money for BLM goes to Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, Kamala Harris, and the other miscreants who make up the today Democratic Party. It is a disgrace, 100% discredited. It has no future whatsoever, period.
I concur. It's become the Communist Party in America.
Yep. Might as well relabel. That would be more honesty in advertising than we're getting from them today. Don, are you ready to take us out?
Oh, take us out. Yeah, I want to take us back to Tahiti, where I'm at. It's just so wonderful. But we're here on Truth versus News here on Monday, October the 19th. And all kinds of things are breaking, and we got some more stuff to go. This is the first hour. The second hour will promise to be best. Scott's got a special feature here from them. So stay tuned, folks. This is the best. Share it, of course, because we've got the truth. And that counters all that crappy news. Bye.